We have taken a look at the various and sundry reasons why Europeans all of a sudden started with a fever to explore in the late 1400s. We took a look at Columbus and his qualifications and the reasons behind uh, the support given him by the Spanish monarchs, of course, Ferdinand and Isabella. Remember, this was a confluence of events. You've got the uh, rise of the printing press, which now could share information, universities, which made sure that information got in uh, the hands who could do the most with it in certain aspects. Uh, we saw, of course, the new inventions, which helped for navigation and helped improve sailing. And of course, maybe, just maybe, above all, the need for money as populations started to grow and as the desire to expand trade between various and sundry nations grew, it meant they were going to need more money. The money supply was not keeping up with the population. So therefore, this need for finding, in this case, of course, gold, was a driving force in propelling various adventurers out into the Atlantic and seeking that pot of gold, if you will. We saw how Columbus uh, discovered. We took a look at how that discovery led to the rise of the conquistadors, two of which uh, was Pizarro in Peru and, of course, Cortez in Mexico. And that, of course, galvanized a lot of other people in other countries to replicate their success. This was the Spanish Bank of North America, if you will. And Spain went from a nobody all of a sudden into the number one world's power because of the uh, riches that she was able to find. So other countries now are going to pursue the same tact. And not only are they going to seek to explore and find riches, but they're also going to attack the Spaniards and try to hijack their riches. And all of this was going to lead to an unintended consequence, and that would be the colonization of North America and the search for the Northwest Passage. If you take a look at that map with the blue and red line on the screen, you'll see that uh, Europeans early on saw North America simply as a roadblock to the riches of Asia. And they would try to find what becomes known as the mythical Northwest Passage, constantly looking for a way through and around North America. Uh, Even after this, 200 years later, when Thomas Jefferson is president of the United States, he's going to send two individuals, Lewis and Clark, uh, thinking that the Missouri River would lead them all the way out to the Pacific, thus giving the United States a Northwest Passage, if you will. So this was a dream of a lot of European explorers to look for that mythical passage. One such explorer was Henry Hudson. This is going to get England into the game. And in this particular case, Hudson is going to conduct 4 different voyages for England. First 2 or 3, he runs into roadblocks, namely Greenland and ice. But then after that, it's going to be a different story. And on his third voyage, the one that you see there in the purple, he's going to, or the blue, I'm sorry, he's going to find the bodies of water that now bear his name, the Hudson River, Hudson's Bay, Hudson Strait. And of course, that's going to give England claim to northern Canada, the area that we now know, of course, as New York and part of New England. On the 4th voyage that Hudson takes, his men kind of get disgusted with him, and they take him and his son and 7 other sailors, put them in a small boat, and set them adrift. Those individuals will never be heard from again. But Hudson plants the English flag. England will not take advantage of it early on, but later on, she obviously will, with an intent to do something that the Spanish and the Portuguese did not intend to do, and that was to colonize. One of the things that will stand out as the various European nations attempt to get in on this game, if you will be the rivalries that they bring with them and transport to the Americas. One of the things that fueled that rivalry, of course, would be the beginnings of the Protestant Reformation and Martin Luther nailing his demands to a cathedral door, and the religious rivalries now that are going to exist between various countries, which at one time were all Catholic. That now was going to change dramatically. And so this was not just a contest about money, it was a contest about souls and beliefs. So those rivalries are going to come with them. And one of those rivalries will be exported by Sir Francis Drake. Drake and some of his other sea dogs, as they will later become known as, will look to set foot in North America in order to find a way station that they can leave in order to hijack the various and sundry ships, the treasure ships that were being now transported back and forth between Spain and her claims in the New World. Drake was a favorite of the Queen Elizabeth, the Elizabethan age. He was also the cousin of Sir Walter Raleigh. And Raleigh was also a favorite of the Queen. And it will be Raleigh that will carry out Drake's dream to establish a colony in North America. Drake became a favorite of the Queen because of what he brought the Queen. And as you see there on the screen, when the Spanish complained, that was all the more reason for the Queen to make him Sir Francis Drake and made him a knight. It would be his idea to establish a colony in North America. The colony, now known as the Lost Colony of Roanoke. However, he leaves this up to Raleigh, but there is a similarity between what Raleigh's going to do and what Drake is going to do. They both will set sail at the same time. Now, I say a similarity and an unfortunate one. Both of their voyages were military in nature. In other words, Drake's was leaving the British ports in order to pirate the Spanish treasures. Raleigh had his group leave the English ports in order to establish a colony. However, he chooses, as the leaders of this expedition and this group whose object was to colonize, military men. And as such, they were not in tune with what had become a very popular English idea. And that was their knowledge of North America and of the Indians, which they knew existed and which they firmly believed those Indians were divided into two groups. A group that would welcome them and help them get rid of the bad Indians, if you will, the evil Indians. This goes all the way back to the time of Cortez, who, of course, befriended a lot of the Indians who were enslaved by the Aztecs. And it was those Indians that helped Cortez get rid of the Aztec rule. The English expected to do the same thing. However, with their expedition being led by military men, they didn't differentiate between different groups of Indians. They saw all Indians as roadblocks to their success. Take a look at this picture of Sir Francis Drake. Now, notice the hand on the globe, thumb on Europe, and the rest of his hand on, that's North America. So his desire to unite, his desire to conquer was obvious. And Roanoke was going to be the first step in that direction. The problem, of course, is going to be Roanoke becomes the lost colony, because after they drop off the few hundred people to colonize, when they come back a year later, if you know anything about the lost colony, if you've ever been down to the Jamestown area in Virginia, they went back, there was not a sign of them, nothing. Nobody knew whatever happened to them. The only thing they will find is something carved on a tree that said Croatan, which some people believe was a tribe from a neighboring island. But Roanoke, to this day, still remains a mystery. Did they, because of their military bent, get in trouble with the local inhabitants and therefore get wiped out? But again, remember, there's not a single sign of their existence. No bones, no dwellings, nothing to indicate exactly what happened to them. Well, of course, not only were the English involved in an attempt to colonize in the New World and use its riches, so was France. And they will establish a colony, which they, of course, call New France. They are going to settle through the main thoroughfare that goes through Canada, southern Canada, and that, of course, would be the St. Lawrence River. But they never really looked to permanently colonize. Yes, they would set up various trading posts that eventually would evolve into cities, Montreal, Toronto, which early on was known as York, and Quebec. But for the most part, the Frenchmen that go over there are hunters, trappers, who are extremely friendly with the local Indians because they saw the Indians as a conduit. It was from the Indians that they were going to get the local treasures. And those treasures happened to be not gold, but of a four-legged nature, namely furs. So that's what they were all about. Their explorers, De La Salle, among others, would go all the way down the Mississippi River to the Gulf of Mexico, thus giving France claim to the heart of North America, if you will. The government did not have much to do with them. They kind of let them do as they will, because the gold, or not the gold, but the riches were coming back to France anyway. Yes, MRSA. Jacques Cartier will be one of the first to explore for France and set up New France. You see the voyages of Cartier there through the Gulf of St. Lawrence and then down the St. Lawrence River, bringing them into the heart of Canada. Again, coincidence. And that coincidence, since Spain had control of the Caribbean and, of course, Latin America, this forced people to go into North America. And that was going to set up future control by France of most of Canada, of course, with the exception of the Hudson Bay region. And again, you see there at the bottom, the French are not necessarily interested in anything but trade networks and then colonies that would turn a quick profit. There is an early map, 1688, of what France controlled. you see there the Great Lakes and the rivers. Now, of course, 1688, and that's a pretty darn accurate map. And living in there, there was a great deal of intermarriage, which helped, of course, unite both the French and the Indians in numerous ways, which the English would never, ever do. Jesuit missionaries would be sent in, some not so successful. Some would be, as the Catholic Church says, martyred for the cause. Others had a great influence on which way the Indians would go. And when I mention which way the Indians would go, the Indians are the wild card in all of this. They are a power in North America. And whoever was able to harness that power to make the right alliances was going to have a leg up in the race to colonize and control North America. Unfortunately for the French, and again, the mistake is understandable, they're going to choose the wrong group. In the meantime, the Dutch get involved. New Netherlands, they're going to settle all along the Hudson River. And of course, what later becomes, as we know, New York. They will establish a busy port, which they will call New Amsterdam, later to become, of course, Manhattan. And there will be wars fought early on in the 1600s for control of the Hudson River Valley. It eventually is going to lead to the construction of a fort. Well, maybe not a fort, more of a wall. That wall is going to be in Manhattan. And it would be there under the protection of that wall, or behind the protection of that wall, underneath a tree, that the Dutch traders would do a lot of their trading. Much of their financial comings and goings would take place under that tree, behind that wall. That wall, of course, will later be named Wall Street. And of course, that's the home of the United States financial markets today. You take a look, and there you see their control seeping into northern New Jersey, there on Long Island, and of course, going up the Hudson River Valley. The English will make their first permanent stop in an area now known as Jamestown. The man whose name you see on the screen, Richard Hakluyt, is a key player in what is about to happen. Hakluyt never sets foot in North America. Hakluyt never sets foot on a ship that's going to North America, though he was a sailor. Hakluyt was a propagandist. Hakluyt wrote numerous tracts, essays, and eventually put into pamphlet form that were meant to convince the Queen and later the King of England as to the importance of colonizing in North America. Hakluyt is going to lay out in systematic form exactly the advantages of English settlement. One, to compete with Spain. Two, to get rid of, if you will, the overcrowding that has taken place on England. Their population had jumped all the way up to 2 million. Now, of course, today in London alone, there's 7. But this was a way of getting the people who were unable to find jobs, as Hakluyt referred to them as, the unwanted, and put them over into North America, giving them a purpose. Jamestown will get off to a disastrous start, and eventually, many of them are going to starve to death. It was only thanks to the Indians, the local Indians, that they were able to survive. Out of the couple hundred that landed, only about 50 are going to make it to the following year. But within a 13-year time period, though they did not find gold, well, they thought they did. When they first landed, now these were all gentlemen explorers, if you will. These were not the unwanted riffraff that Hakluyt was referring to. When they first landed, they saw the golden sand beaches of Virginia, and they filled up treasure chest with that sand, thinking it was gold dust, and sent it back to England as a prize. Well, if they're intending to play beach volleyball over in England, yeah, it's a great start. But otherwise, obviously, uh, they misread the entire situation. But in 13 years' time, now the colony is going to turn a profit. And Jamestown, founded by the London Company, and we'll talk more about them in a later lecture, is going to be a bonanza. In the meanwhile, up north, years later, another group working with the London Company is going to land way off course on a rock, according to legend, uh, Plymouth Rock, of course, in Massachusetts. And before they leave and uh, debark from their ship, they sign the Mayflower Compact. That one-page document is the beginnings of what becomes the United States Constitution. It says something from the very beginning that was in contradiction to normal governmental power. And that was, namely, that the power flowed from the people, that the power flowed from the bottom up, not from the top on down. And that idea, as simple as it may sound, is in its sense the beginnings of a revolution. But we'll talk more about that later. 120 people will land. 60 of them would be classified as what we call pilgrims, and 60 of them had nothing to do with the Puritan faith. They were simply there as adventurers. So the stage has been set for permanent colonies in the New World. How they will thrive, how they will differ, and what they will lead to, we'll take a look in our next lecture on the colonies.